Thanks for joining today, guys. My name is Lance with Acquira. This is the Acceleration Program group call that we host weekly with different vendors, members, and really anybody that's going to benefit your path. And so what we want to do is create synergy around the acquisition topic. And so for you guys, you're all in different stages and journeys, but one thing you got to realize is with an acquisition comes the second mountain, post-acquisition. And so getting into the trenches, I'd like to introduce to you guys, which is probably no introduction at all, is Kylon Gienger, former Acquira president, but also acquisition entrepreneur, married, has a daughter, has been married for about 10 years. Kylon has experience starting businesses and exiting them, but also acquiring a business and growing that. And so we'd love to open it up to Kylon today, just to kind of answer that you guys have regarding post-acquisition, different things that come up, but also we have a generated list of questions that were already asked before this, so we can go off of that too. But what I want to do is just create transparency, make you guys feel comfortable. There's no questions, but let's dive in and welcome Kylon Gienger.
Hey guys, good to be here. Good to see you all. I think I recognize, and there's here, or there's the rest of you guys are I think new. Hey, how's it going, man? Good to be here. In advance, I apologize. I came down with a decent cold, so I might sound a little funny. Might have to mute to cough here, and my brain's working a little bit slower, it feels like. But yeah, super quick background on me. Was part of Acquira's founding team, so in semi kind of involved still, but I really stepped out a few months back to work on my own acquisitions. And so back in, I bought into a plumbing company back in June of this year. And then I am closing on an HVAC company in 2 weeks here. We'll sign papers next week, and then we close on the 31st, right at the end of the year. So this plumbing company, I'm in the office here, we're on about a $1.5 million revenue run rate right now. So it's relatively smaller. However, we've grown that 60% since we came on in June. So I can talk a little bit about that. The HVAC deal that I'm doing next is much larger. They'll do about 12.5 million in revenue this year. And so I'm going to be stepping into that beast here very shortly, first thing January, so I can talk a little bit about what I plan to do there and stuff too. So with that, happy to turn it over to anybody who's got questions. But I see we got some good ones that people asked prior to the call too that I can jump to if we need to. But fire away if you guys got them.
So break the ice. So as you're working on your second acquisition, I would be interested to know how all that works with the SBA, assuming that you're doing acquisitions through the SBA. I mean, for the second acquisition, do you have to have additional collateral to cover, or are the lenders okay kind of being under collateralized?
Yeah, so the HVAC company will be through an SBA loan. Needless to say, because of its size, it's at the max 5 million loan. So once I do this loan, like I'm capped. I can't get another SBA loan for anything else until I pay that one down or pay it off, refinance or something. So I'm putting a lot of eggs in one basket there. This plumbing company was not done with an SBA loan. It was some money down seller financing, and the seller actually retained 20%. I noticed a question in there about retainage, sellers retaining a certain amount of equity in the business post-acquisition. So I can talk a little bit about how that's worked. So both the seller and his wife are still actively involved in the day-to-day of the business, and we've been working together to grow the thing. And so nurturing that relationship has been great, and something I can talk about as well. So no SBA loan here, but SBA loan for the one I'm doing, and I'm done with SBA for a while after that one, but I'm gonna have to get treated.
So Did the lender ask you to have 25% of $5 million in collateral, in personal guarantee?
Yeah, so there's a very large cash outlay on that one. The high level, the purchase price for that one. So 12 and a half million or so in revenue. The SDE for 2020 was 1.8 million. The purchase price that I negotiated was a $6 million purchase price on the business. However, as part of that, he is giving us 1.5 million in accounts receivable with no accounts payable attached. And so that's going to be secured by 1.5 million that he'll leave in escrow from his proceeds from the sale. That if we don't hit that 1.5 million from AR that we'll collect post close, he'll release that money to us. So effectively, it becomes a $4.5 million purchase price. And you might be thinking like that's a pretty decent multiple for that size of business, and it is, right? So I've built a good relationship with the seller. He's ready to retire. He actually wasn't wanting to sell until we got in touch and we just developed a good relationship. And he's like, okay, I can trust you, hand the business over and retire a little bit early. He likes to scuba dive, wants to do that more. But the other part of this is it is like 80% new construction, new construction and residential and commercial new construction HVAC. So that makes it a little bit not risky, just if you know much about service work versus new construction in the trades, service work is generally more desirable. In fact, here we move strictly to service work. It's just higher margin, it's more turnkey, and that will in turn make a business more valuable. So there were some grounds for having a little bit more of a reasonable multiple on this one. And honestly, that large new construction component was the only thing that made me kind of nervous about the deal, but there are some components and nuances to it that make me feel comfortable with that. But we will be right out of the gate working very hard to grow their service department. They have a service department already that's about the size of Plum Tech here. It's like 4 techs. And so we're going to be tackling that hard and working to diversify our revenue a bit more towards that over the first two years or so. But I don't know much about the new construction. I mean, these guys are doing multi-million-dollar, condo, like high rises, hospitals, you name it. So I found and signed an employment contract with a guy who has a lot of experience estimating and project managing these large projects. And he'll essentially take on all the duties of the seller post-acquisition. And he's worked in companies that are new construction companies that are doing 100 million plus in revenue. So he knows a lot more than I do. We've developed a good relationship. So I'm going to be working right in tandem with him right out of the gate with this one. He'll tackle the new construction, I'll tackle the service, and we'll kind of work to grow that together. So the thesis here is like, generally speaking, new construction, if there's a large component there, it's kind of a yellow to red flag. You want to really look at that. What are those relationships like? How does that diversify? How many GCs is that? Is it 10 that he's working with, or is it just 1 or 2 key GCs? You want to look into that. But my thesis here is that inside every new construction company is a service company, and we can kind of work to build that, right? So does that make sense? Yeah.
Kylon, so the gentleman that you had the agreement with, is he the license holder, or were you the license holder?
There's 2 or 3 other key employees in the business. 12.5 million in revenue. There's 80 employees. So there's a few in there that have key licenses, but this is in Spokane, Washington. And so if you dig into HVAC licensing requirements in Washington, it's not as stringent as some states. And we're talking about like refrigerant licenses around that, and also electrical. So it's something I could even get in time versus Montana here. If you want to have a plumbing company in Montana, you have to be a master plumber. And we're talking about over a decade of time and experience there. Like you can't just become that. Right. So part of the reason why the seller here is still involved. And if for some reason he wasn't, I'd be paying him a monthly fee or something to use his license. So yeah, good question.
Thank you.
I would.
And it's finally nice to see you. I've seen you in all the videos, and so it's nice to see you now.
Yeah, I know. I'm still in all the videos, and appreciate you watching those. My hair's a bit longer now, but yeah, it's good to meet all you guys.
So Kylon, would you, on the Plum Tech where the previous or the sellers are still active, could you walk us through a little bit like the agreement you have with them? Is there a specific time frame of when they will leave or retire, or what's the whole deal with that?
Well, I mean, the agreement's pretty simple. They retain 20%. The master plumber, his name's Lance. He's probably one of the best plumbers and boiler techs in Missoula here. Very, very focused on excellence and almost kind of perfection on the job. And he loves to kind of be out there in the field training new guys that we hire. So our agreement with him was, hey, you can step into the service manager position. And so he basically manages all the work and techs and everything that's actually happening in the field. And for that, he gets a salary of $100K per year, plus some extra hourly here and there if he actually has to put on the tool belt himself and cover for some of our techs if they get sick or something. And then his wife, Carlette, is kind of the mom queen of the office. I don't know how you want to put it, but she is kind of office manager, answers the phones, dispatch. She wears a lot of hats at the size we're at and has been doing it quite a bit. So she's very, very good at it. So she's continuing to do that. And there's no agreement for necessarily when they will be done. I mean, I've talked to them, and we'll talk more like, hey, you guys going to reach a point where you kind of want to take it a bit easy. And, they have one kid left in high school. So when he graduates, what are they going to do? They've got a cabin up in up by Flathead Lake. And so when that time comes, we'll, if they want to step away, we can certainly work with them on that, but there's no set agreement necessarily there. But it's been nice having them involved, right? Because part of what I've done is how have they been doing things over the last decade. And so we've learned those processes and documented that. And then how are we doing things from here on out as the business grows? And so we've documented that too. So they really could step out, and probably a good portion of their day-to-day kind of workload and processes is documented, and somebody could easily step in there. So that's kind of the arrangement there. But if you do that, you got to be good with people, right? And they are like, they're my business partners. So we treat each other as such. They're part of weekly leadership team meetings. They have access to all our P&Ls and how the business is doing. And we talk about owner distributions and what that's going to look like and their roles. And, we're partners in the business basically.
Hey, Kyle and Doug here. I wanted to follow up on that question Jim's there. Do you foresee any problems of the owner getting frustrated or undermining your plans on going forward?
Yeah. And it's happened, right? And it's so frustration, yes, certainly. And not just from them, from us, from everybody here, right? So the first thing I did when I came in was not just change up a bunch of stuff, right? I would suggest anybody, you buy your business, step one. And when I buy this one here in 2 weeks, step one is I just observe. I'll sit there with my computer in front of different people and literally watch them work and ask a bunch of questions and basically document in kind of SOP format how they're doing things now. I need to understand the workflow throughout the entirety of the business. I also need to build a lot of trust and rapport. So I'm having one-on-ones where we're do a lot of meetings and talking to people about, here's who we are, who are you? And, here's where we want to kind of take the company. So you're doing a lot of that. Then we did things like, I imagine folks here are familiar with Service Titan. So like we implemented Service Titan. There was like a 2-week sort of, hell week period there implementing it. And I would say overall, it takes a solid 3 months to kind of implement and have everybody get really comfortable with it. But certainly during that time and other changes we made, there's a lot of frustration, right? From from the previous owners, from the techs, nothing that lasted too long, but it's just because of change, right? So there, I mean, particularly there was one evening I remember when Lance, the master plumber, he came in and we just kind of got into it. We really were butting heads, and you know, he was saying a bunch of stuff, I was saying a bunch of stuff, and I kept trying to drill down into like, what is this really about? What are we at? Like, what's the actual issue here? And it literally came down to our price book. So part of Service Titan and part of moving to from like time and materials pricing to flat rate pricing, we can talk about pricing strategy and stuff, but is having a price book together. So it's thousands of materials, thousands of different kind of service items, and it's neatly organized with pictures and, you know, all this stuff, so that with the guys with the iPads, they can go out there and they can estimate and kind of click things and off you go, right? But that takes a lot of work. It's still a work in progress. That's really what takes a lot of time. But it's worth it because everything I add to that price book, it's getting stuff out of the seller's head. And that's what I was making really clear to him. I was like, look, you got all this knowledge in your head. He was doing all the estimating, he was doing all the invoicing, he was doing all the you know, customer you know, like on the job and stuff. We have to get that out of his head and into process so the other techs can do it and distribute that. But literally that argument, it came down to, I wasn't focusing enough on the price books, and he doesn't love technology. We'll be the first to admit that to you. So he's out there with helping our techs, and they're trying to build an estimate, and there's stuff that's not in the price book that should be. And I just didn't know. I didn't know he was getting this frustrated. I didn't know the techs were frustrated about that. So the next meeting, I kind of called everybody out, and I was like, look, you guys have been frustrated at me for, you know, 2 weeks here. Everybody's quality of life has been lowered. And I was like, I didn't know. You have to tell me these things. You have to be transparent with me. We've got to have a transparent flow of communication. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I'm chill over here. You guys need me to focus on the price book. That's going to be my highest priority now. And from then on, it was, you know, easy. The like key lesson I'll point out there that I forgot for a second is my primary role. Your primary role, if you step into one of these businesses, is to serve. It's literally just to, whenever you're wondering like, what should I do today? My first thought is like, how can I make everybody else's life a little bit better, make their job easier, empower them more, kind of increase their quality of life? And I wasn't asking that question. And because of that, I lost track, and their quality of life was going down because I wasn't focusing on the stuff that I uniquely could do. So, but there's other things too, man. Like I'm okay talking about this like in the office because I've had very transparent conversations with the seller about it. There's definitely some ego that he has over. So I like shot out to, I like open book management. So I'm pretty transparent with pretty much everybody here on how we're doing as a company, even the techs. And I tell the techs, I say, if you want to look at our P&L and kind of look at our margins and see what we're making and what, you know, I said, I'll explain this all to you and how our pricing works into that. I'll explain this all if you guys want it. You know, we had our best month in the company's, you know, history in September after we implemented Service Titan. It was just a major win. I was stoked about it. So I shot it out on our team Slack to all the techs and stuff. And then I got a message from the owner, you know, essentially saying, hey, this kind of hurts my feelings that we're doing so well because I feel like the techs think that I should have done this well before, and I'm not. And so I feel like they think less of me. Like he's very transparent, and I was grateful for that, but it was something I never would have seen coming. And because of that, it was almost undermining our progress a bit, because, you know, he was also messaging the techs on the side being like, hey, I'm sorry guys. Or, you know, our 5-star reviews have gone through the roof. We average like 1 a day now. And his initial reaction when we get 5-star reviews, I used to send them out to the team as a whole, would be, don't get a big head. Like, you guys are doing well now. You think you're hot shit. You're getting all this commission now that I've implemented. You're like getting all these 5-star reviews. Like, don't get a big head. Don't. So I'm trying to encourage. And then every time I encourage, he's trying to like kind of undermine that and not be happy for it. And the techs see that, and it's a whole thing. So it's these weird little people things. For him, it was just ego. We had to have a really transparent talk about that, almost like a counseling session. And he was good. You know, I told him straight up, this, you know, we can't be doing this. And he's like, I know, I'm pretty sure it's because of my dad and the way I was brought up. I got these like issues I'm still dealing with today. So I'm rambling a bit, but that's the kind of stuff you can deal with. There's far more of a like people aspect and people problems to this, and I think most people think. So you got to be good with people. You got to be empathetic. You got to seek first to understand. Most of the guys are Christian here, so I'm constantly looking at them and like, we got to be these kind of people. And I tell them like, it's Christian shit. Like, you just love your neighbor as yourself. Just keep that in mind. We're gonna be okay. So yeah.
Just that's funny you mentioned that, because I was talking, me and my business partner yesterday had a call with a prospective business, and he mentioned that in the contract he put where his father would sort of stay on and be sort of a lamppost or figure, something. He wouldn't have any official duties, but he wasn't someone that was just gonna like leave. And so for us, that was sort of an interesting red flag to where you put in the contract that he couldn't, like he would be allowed to come around and just chit chat with the customers and things like that. And we just found it very, very odd. Even, again, he wouldn't have any official capacity, we were sure, but we just had to be very clear in the contracts what he'd be doing, but also just like, it just showed us that, are they ready to really sell this business? And in that regard. But also another thing that made us hesitate over that deal was just their financing structure, which was not friendly to SBA lending whatsoever. And, he wanted to be in the first position for any kind of financing that came through. But it just was, it was an interesting call, but just the fact you mentioned that with your relationship with the sellers and them being part of the business still post acquisition, I found interesting, and just curious on, I guess, what advice do you have if we found ourselves in that situation to really weigh, is that something we want to do, or do we want to have the business outright to not have any interference from the previous owners?
Yeah, it's just a trade-off, right? Like with so many other things in life. Like this next acquisition I'm doing, the owner's sticking around in a full-time capacity for 3 months, but then after that, like he's gone, and he'll probably be gone before then, honestly, because I think we'll be able to manage without him sooner than 90 days. So yeah, I've often thought about that, right? The benefit of having the owners involved here. It was just a lot easier to step in, get involved, and do stuff. I've been able to work almost exclusively on the business and instead of in it, right? I don't have to be part of sort of the day-to-day operations. I can strictly work on the business, and that's powerful and the best use of my time, frankly. And that's because the owners are involved. Right, but the trade-off is like, yeah, you've got business partners, so you can't just, you got other people you kind of need to run decisions by, and it's been their business for years, right? And so there's stuff that comes with that too that can make change interesting. And like the previous owner is now in kind of a management position, and we've talked about this, he'll be the first to admit, like he's not a manager. Like that's a whole different, I think management as a skill set can be learned, but it's a whole different thing. He's a technician. He's a great technician, but he's never been in a management position, right? So that got to work through that a bit. Whereas stepping into this next acquisition, right, I think I'm really going to enjoy having full kind of operational control, nobody to bring anything from the past into where I'm trying to bring it in the future. No strong opinions, basically. I know I can pretty much roll things out, and I don't kind of have to fight people. In some ways that can be valuable, like disagreeability. I tell the guys here, like, disagree with me. Like, I don't want this to be like an echo chamber, but then at the same time, I know it's going to be very intense stepping into this business. Like from day one, the seller's starting to let go of his responsibilities, and I have to fill those, plus this other guy. So it's a trade-off, man. And before I bought this, I had an opportunity to come down and meet everybody and hang out with the seller. And what sold me on it was the people here. I fit in immediately. I liked everybody here in the office. I mean, yeah. So that's key. That's key too. Like I just knew in my gut, I was like, man, these are my type of people. I can get along with them. I'm a culture fit. So that made me more comfortable too.
Okay. No, that's helpful. We did say we ended up going with it. Say our financing was more in order. We definitely take 3 weeks to just observe and understand what his father actually be doing, and like just really get a sense of the day-to-day and to ensure that we felt good about it. And then also going through all of their years of receipts, because it was a very heavy cash business. So that also made us another red flag of like, if they can't prove the money there, we need to be able to see. And also to be year 2021 and have a heavy cash business like that, it's just like, there's no reason, especially when he understood the demographic was shifting drastically towards the millennial generation. And like the older, because this is in Long Island, very traditional, heavy Italian Jewish community, like, and he was very upfront with us, and he asked us sort of at one point our nationalities, and we're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll get into that. But he did it to be transparent in terms of like, as you know, an Italian run a business that at one point during the year they sell tomatoes, and like, you know, they'll have sauce for like the Italians. They're not going to, that business would absolutely go away once we took over. Like they wouldn't trust us to like sell no matter what, like, because we're not Italian, we're not like, it's just not going to happen. We were like, no, fair, we're not, we don't disagree with you in that regard. But it just was very interesting to hear his perspective as we asked more questions. He opened up to like really let us know sort of his experience and like the neighborhood and whatnot. And we left it on a very good note with him, and we're going to reach out again as we continue to look into the space, because this is in the nursery plant area. So landscape and design a little bit.
Gotcha.
And there's tons of opportunity. Honestly, the business hits on every key point that acquirer has talked about wanting to do in terms of like e-commerce potential expansion, knowing how to think about the website, and then also the sort of building of the team and like the opportunities there to really develop like everything literally checked the box. It was just the financing was really the big kicker there. But you know, it's as we learned, we can't get attached to things, but we continue building that relationship and maybe circle back around, because we don't see it going away anytime soon. And just based on how many times he's had to sell and its sales falling through, and him being willing to sell his other business and come back and run this full time, because it's a business that him and his father had that he's left and did another business, and now he's managing both this business and his business. He prefers his other business because it's less work. This one is very labor intensive, but we have a feeling that he'll probably end up having to sell his other business and do this full time, and maybe we might be in a better position to circle back with him at that point. But it was definitely a good first conversation for us to have with them, just to get a better sense of the landscape in the area for sure.
Good, man. That's good to hear. And meeting him in person is going to be probably even more illuminating. And with the seller note, you know, you probably already explained to him, but make sure he understands. Yeah, if you're going to do it with an SBA loan, it has to be junior to the SBA loan.
Right, and he wasn't willing to do that, so we'd have to get creative in our financing options there. And
but it doesn't mean, right? He like make sure he understands. It doesn't mean you can't start paying on the seller note day one. Like you can certainly pay.
No, he's very familiar. He's open and run several businesses. He's very familiar with the SBA process. He just personally doesn't want to be second in line or third in line in terms of like
he just, the other thing to let him know is like, unless I don't know what the purchase price is, but I imagine it's, you know, high six figures or, you know, somewhere in the 7-figure range. If he really wants to sell it to a buyer, that buyer is going to bring financing, and whatever that financing is probably going to want to be senior, right? So unless he's doing something really creative or somebody's bringing a lot of cash.
And that's why we're not worried about it still being there and down the road, to be honest. Like,
yeah. He talked to 10 other buyers, and probably 8 of them are going to tell him the same thing, right? So
we're not too concerned. If it's gone, it's gone. You know, we can't be attached to it, but we have a feeling that we can maybe circle back as a second purchase. It won't be our first.
Yeah, sweet. It's great, man.
Okay, I do have a question regarding your new acquisition. So you said the bulk of the business is on new construction, and new construction to me makes me think of relationship, that the seller may have with the builders. And so if that is the case for your acquisition, if you can tell us more, how you're planning to mitigate those personal relationships when the seller will be phasing out of the business?
Yeah, but basically relying on my people skills and the people skills of the guy I hire. That is like, so he has enough work coming from enough GCs where I'm not necessarily like, if we lose one relationship, maybe even two, it's not gonna kill the business, right? So that's a key part, is that, you know, revenue concentration on the relationship level, right? But the other component is, right, I am hiring a guy who I've vetted very thoroughly, met in person multiple times, who's been in a company this size and helped, you know, build it up to 100 million, you know, more than 10x our size, or just under 10x our size. And he's also he's a very personable person, right? So I have a lot of confidence, and he's going to be I'm trying to get him to be that key relationship holder. But, you know, him and I will probably both take all these GCs out to lunch multiple times with the seller, and then probably without the seller. And, you know, between, I know the seller likes us and respects us a lot. I think he can hand off that relationship well. I have a lot of faith in my people skills, and the guy I'm hiring seems to be also, you know, very good with kind of people. And so I feel confidence there. But the other part of it is we will be trying to grow other areas of the business, including new construction. Like we'll do more estimates, we'll put out more work, more kind of feelers, and work to build those relationships more. There's another component too, when you get really familiar with the new construction world, like he does all the HVAC work in all the Hayden homes that are being built around kind of the Coeur d'Alene, Hayden area up in Spokane. So this is like hundreds and hundreds of homes per year that he's doing. And he's been in tight with most of these relationships he's had with GMs span more than 5 years. And he's in tight with them, and they do these large projects. So if you, basically it would be very difficult for that GC to go and find another HVAC company that could keep up with the kind of work that he needs done, right? There's maybe one or two other HVAC companies in town that can handle the volume that they're doing. So from that standpoint too, they're kind of married at this point with a lot of these GCs. And thus, or this brings up another point that's unique about this deal is it's actually it's a union, non-union shop hybrid. So just under half of their team is actually their union. And this has allowed them to grow very rapidly in the new construction space, because essentially they can take on some very, very large jobs, and they can pull from, since they're a union shop technically, they can pull from that union labor pool and expand by 30, 50 people if they need to, in like that, and tackle these large jobs. And then those folks go back to a labor pool when the job's done. So, the seller's not worried about keeping 30, 40, 50 people busy. He can land any large job he wants. You're paying higher wages for those union folks, but there's lots of different types of subsidies and stuff like that actually bring that wage down, so you can actually competitively bid against non-union shops. So there's some nuance, like I said, and components to this on the new construction side that are unique and maybe give us some unique advantages, I would say. Not to mention, if you do any research on Spokane's new construction, like it's booming right now, and I just need it to keep doing that for at least another year or two, and that's it. Because by then I think I can have the service department up and running a little bit bigger and offset a little bit more. But yeah, I never saw myself owning a union shop, but that's where we're headed. It's very unique. He's the only one in the state that he knows of. Good stuff. Any other questions? We can switch topics or.
Yeah, Kylon, this is Jim. I had one question on the plumbing company that you bought. Did you mention that that was 100% seller financed? There's no like SBA loan on that one? Yeah,
no SBA loan.
Yeah. Could you just walk us through how, the general terms of how you agreed on that, or what the terms were? There's like percentages that,
Yeah, so we let me just try to recall here. It
Just
was,
from a high level, you don't have to get into the muddy details, you know?
yeah, no. So we valued the business at I believe it was 900,000. And then we were only going to purchase, we only purchased 80% of that. So whatever 80% of 900,000 is, that was the purchase price. And then what that number, we put down, it was just over 30% cash. And then the rest was seller finance. So we have about a 435,000 is where it's at, $435,000 seller note right now to finish purchasing the rest of that, the rest of the 80% of the business. So it was a good win. I mean, the business was quite a bit smaller, although very quality and very kind of well run. They got some cash up front in their pocket, and then really where they were at is not ready to retire. They built a really neat business, but it was still kind of a small bit like a sole proprietorship, basically, not like a company. And they wanted somebody to come on and help them just grow it and take it to the next level and participate in that with the 20%. So so it's kind of a win-win. We got a really favorable kind of structure on the deal, towards us. They got some cash, and then now we've grown it by 60%, and so they get to participate in that. And also they're not running around anymore like putting out fires. Like they quite literally just wanted to be employees in their own business, but still have that ownership and just earn more. And now they're actually doing that. So that was, that was attractive too. So I'd suggest that as well. Like when you do your one-on-ones up front, like where do people actually want to be, and work to make that happen? Our seller was doing all the invoicing, all the estimating. Like I said earlier here, he was constantly in the office here, just on the computer, and absolutely hated that. Just quality of life way down the drain. And so in the first couple of months, we basically distributed all those responsibilities. Service Titan helped a lot with that to all the other techs. And now all he gets to do is run around in this brand new decked out Toyota Tacoma and run around the jobs and teach and mentor the technicians. And he loves it. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually looking at a plumbing company here in Massachusetts. It's similar to that, a little bit bigger, like 2.6 million, but same thing. The owner wants to stay on, but he just hates his life because he's so crazy. So
does he do a lot of the estimating, invoicing? And
he does it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he just wants to get back to the basics, and he wants someone else to kind of take this business to the next level. So I've been working with Hayden on it, and we were looking at, a deposit similar to what you paid, but then a combination of seller financing and an earnout. It's not SBA eligible. It's only been in business for 2+ years. So, but it's a nice success story. But so we were looking at the same, seller or earnout, and we figured that instead of him retaining some equity, which might be problematic down in the future, you could give him some upside with, the earnout might be higher than what he was even asking for, for a sale price if we can grow it substantially. So.
Yeah, it certainly could. Would you look to still retain him as a employee or management in the business?
Yeah, he's only 26 years old. He started 2.5 years ago. Now he has 17 employees and should hit $3 million in revenue, but he just kept getting more work, which he's really good at. Kept hiring people out of the trade school and guys that he knows. But now he's, kind of woke up one day and like, God, I hate my life. I didn't want to do this. So I didn't want to run a business. I just want to be a plumber and go out there and quote and do the work. And
yep.
So
that's great, man. That's exciting. I would, if I had to talk about some things that were surprises to me kind of coming in that I didn't really think about. One of them was, definitely take a look at, I'm sure you already have, but at the licensing requirements for technicians. If you're looking at a plumbing or like an HVAC company where you've got guys in vans running around doing stuff, what does it take to get them to that point? Because in Montana, it's probably one of the strictest states in terms of everybody you hire, they've got to be an apprentice registered with the state, and it'll take them the amount of skills they have to learn to get in their own truck, it's a minimum of 9 months from when we hire them to when we have them in their own truck and they're actually generating revenue. Most likely a year, right? And so I came in with these, grand ideas of let's hire 10 people like tomorrow. And it's more like, no, you're looking at, hiring one, or because you have a ratio too of like journeyman to apprentice that you have
Right.
to. So it's more like hiring 1 or 2 folks a quarter, and then they will start generating revenue, 3 quarters down the road. So it's slower. And I haven't had a lot of luck hiring really experienced journeymen. 1, because they're few and far between, and 2, because they usually come with a lot of bad habits and not necessarily culture fit, and it doesn't always work out. So we kind of have a grow our own philosophy here. We hire young guys straight out of high school and train them, teach them everything they know, and those guys become really loyal kind of lifers, right? And we also pay our guys. We brought in benefits, we brought in commission, we raised wages. Our guys are probably some of the best paid plumbers in the valley here, and that was very, very intentional, because once we got them and their quality, we don't want them going anywhere else. So
Yeah, if you lose them, it's expensive to replace them, that's for sure. If
Yeah.
you can even do that.
Yeah, so your average plumber in his own truck will, I'd say average revenue they would generate is probably in that around that 300K per year range. It's kind of what it like average. Below average is probably 200 to 250K. A good plumber will do 400K per year. A really good plumber will do 450 to $500,000 per year. And we're really blessed here. We have 3 guys in trucks. They all do 480, 500K per year. They're just fantastic. And a lot of that's because of the master plumber here. He's just a very good trainer, mentor, been doing this a long time. So yeah, it's expensive. It's literally $500,000 gone if like one of these guys leaves. So I focus on our technicians a lot. Good stuff. Any other questions? Top of mind. I can look at this list here too. Let's see. Yeah, somebody asked how important is providing benefits to workers in the plumbing industry. Yeah, I would say very. Like we came in, we offered medical benefits for the guys, 401k matching, a very clear sort of ascension plan from here's where you start with your hourly wage. And when you do these things, I have sort of a 4-step process when they start with us. So you can be a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 technician with us. And every level you have to learn new skills. And then once you learn those, you get a higher wage. And then we did commission pay for the guys, which we launched last month. And that's been a very big hit because as the company grows, they get to basically participate in that, and they feel very included. And it's based on them hitting a certain amount of revenue per week, basically. I've done the math, and here's our overhead. What's our desired net profit? Here's our material costs. Here's the costs of the guys in the field, basically our cost of goods sold. You add all that up, divide it by the amount of guys that you have that are actually generating that revenue. And then okay, here's how much revenue these guys need to generate on a yearly, monthly, weekly, daily basis in order to pay for everything we need to pay for and have our net profit on top of that to reinvest back into the business, pay their wage, all that stuff. That also determines your pricing. But once we define that, and I made that very clear to everybody, we had spreadsheets up on the TV and everything. When they will hit that number at usually midweek or so, any additional revenue they do over that is basically gravy, right? Because we know exactly, okay, now we paid for everything. Here's our net profit. So anything they do, it's gravy on top, and they get to participate in that. So they get a chunk of that revenue every week, and it turns out to be, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 extra per month that these guys can earn, and that's that's huge for them.
And is that a transparent plan where like, other than the actual revenue, like people would know like what everyone is getting as like say a percentage of that revenue?
The guys talk. I don't necessarily share it transparent with everybody. Like, hey everyone, here's what Jake did in commission last week. But the guys talk. They know what they each other does, and they're relatively all similar. They're similarly skilled, so they all do about the same. Let's see here if I can find any other questions. Or if anybody thinks of any others, feel free to shoot them out.
Yeah, one of the ones that I had was, and you might have already addressed this a little bit, was just kind of before you went into it, you probably had your, what you thought were going to be the issues or the main things you had to focus on. Anything that surprised you that either was that you just didn't expect or was a lot more of a focus than you thought it would be?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It was how much I'd be involved in, how much I would be I'm blanking on the word. How much I'd be involved in the technology here, basically. Like I'm kind of the geek squad around here because of all the stuff we've implemented. I mean, we came in, we're rolling out, everybody's on Google Workspace now. So all of our SOPs, everything is centralized in Google Docs and stuff. And everybody's learning how to use that. We got everybody on Slack. We implemented Service Titan. Everybody gets iPads all of a sudden. There's a price book in there. So I'm very, very involved almost on a daily basis in helping troubleshoot technology issues. And also the price book. The price book is not something I had any idea I'd have to really focus on going into it. But it'll take up a very large chunk of your time up front, and it can be tedious, man. But it's so helpful because again, it's putting it in a system that everybody can use. Once you create, an install of an electric, 40-gallon hot water heater, and you add the 40 different types of material that you could use on that job and the time it takes, and that enters, that's a flat rate price and all the pictures and stuff. It's done, right? And the guys can use that, for forever. You might do some updates, but we're talking about thousands and thousands of materials and thousands of different types of services that needs to be sort of entered and designed out in this price book. Service Titan can help with that. They give you a good template, but that was surprising. I didn't really expect that. So are you guys, do you want to, or are you going to ask a question?
Yeah, so just a follow-up. So you talked about kind of the price book quite extensively, and if I understood correctly, there was a master plumber in the earlier days responsible for pricing. And you worked on kind of extracting some knowledge out of him to kind of come up with a standard way of coming up with pricing, if I understood correctly. I wanted to ask you in that journey whether the master plumber feared for his own job security, and if so, how you navigated that situation.
Feared for his own job security when it came to figuring out the new pricing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking because?
No, so if I understood correctly, there was one guy who did pricing for all the jobs in the past.
Yep.
And is that correct?
Yeah, and they were doing it on a time and material basis, and he was charging about $190 an hour. So they'd be on a job for 2 hours. He'd charge $190 times 2, plus any materials they used, plus a bit of a markup, and that's all in his head. Or if he was making an estimate, it would be all in his head to calculate about how long it would take and the materials to use. That's how it used to be.
And so the question is, I understood you were extracting basically logic he had in his head to come up with pricing and build a pricing book or some sort of way for everybody else to do pricing. And so when in that process, he had some issues and reservations about, feeling like his job security was a risk. And so if you can tell us how you navigated that situation.
Yeah, no, it's a very astute question, because that did happen, or something similar to it. So it's one of those just kind of people things we've been working through, and something you just got to work through when you're working with a previous seller, or even probably an employee that's maybe management or something that's had a lot of say in how things run in the past. As we rolled out a bunch of changes, so for instance, when we changed the pricing, and I figured it all out. It's all on the sheet, and I sat the seller down and kind of talked him through it, made sure he understood, got him on board. We presented to the guys, but you're absolutely right. In like a 2-week period, he went from he's doing all the estimating and invoicing to now like 4 other people are doing it, and he doesn't necessarily have direct oversight of that. So it's part of growth, right? You gotta create a process, and then you gotta delegate that and empower other people. But that delegating and empowering part has been difficult for him, I know, at various stages, right? There's this kind of innate want to still kind of control as we're growing, as the company's growing. It's to control. Like, everybody still needs to do things the way that he would do them, right? So micromanaging, a lot of tendency to micromanage and kind of be a bottleneck and stuff like that. So these are things we've had to talk about a lot, and at the end of the day, just be like, you gotta trust your technicians to start doing these things, or you're just going to make yourself miserable trying to control it, and you're going to hold back progress and growth. So along with that, we've made more mistakes, like we've gotten more callbacks on jobs and stuff, but that's part of the growing pains, right? But we'd get 1 extra callback in a week, and that would really stress him out, because he's never had that happen before, and he's got techs out there running around doing stuff and making decisions without him asking him first. And it's like we had to really drive home the point that's okay. That's actually what we want. And as we grow, you no longer are just managing a bunch of technicians. You'll start managing managers, and here's what that looks like. And so it's kind of coaching people through, and even our technicians through, what growth of a business looks like, and how they need to let go more control. And it's all about systems and the right people in place. So
I love that you mentioned people skills, Kylon. You've said that like multiple times now, right? And I think sometimes people believe they have people skills, but then they get into a situation and they could doubt themselves, right? So it's like, okay, what is it that it really looks like for people skills? Like, if you're sitting in a heated conversation with somebody, I'd love to hear kind of your people skills 101, and maybe just, take us back to the basics.
Yeah, it is basic stuff. It's, again, seeking first to understand. It's always putting the relationship before the business, right? There's been periods of time where we've actually taken probably more of a hit in terms of revenue and business performance to put the relationship and the person first. But that's always paid off, because you keep building that trust with them to be able to implement more and more changes. It's being very even keel, right? I don't like raise my voice or lose my temper, or slap my hand down on something, or I have to be the even keeled kind of mature one in these conversations. And I'm usually just I keep asking the question, why, like try to dig into the root of whatever's going on. Like when that seller, when he came to me, and like, he was just for 40 minutes, just spewed a bunch of stuff out that he was obviously very, very frustrated. I was like, half of the things you've just talked about, I know are probably not the root cause of this. What is it? It was as simple as like, hey, I just need you to focus more on the price book. Yeah, it's stuff like that. You had a question?
Hey, Kylon, a little bit different than some of the questions you guys have so far, but I was wondering, are you guys doing anything strategic around some of the expense allocations? Obviously, there's a ton of things that you guys are purchasing within the business. I was wondering if you guys are using any particular types of credit cards or anything that can essentially stack points, turn into cash back, or turn into free flights, and some of these things that really almost equate to dollars.
Yes, I've got a whole list of, Divvy, Divvy card, or divvy.com, maybe DIVVY. I'd look them up. We use Divvy pretty religiously for a lot of our purchasing. I'll try to touch on it a bit. My wife kind of handles that. She knows a lot. She's involved in the business too, all our businesses, and she knows a lot more of that than me. But it essentially does act like a credit card, except zero fees. I don't know if we get any cash back or anything like that, but it's a really neat app that allows you to issue cards to all your employees for gas and stuff like that very easily, track those expenses very easily. And it is a credit card, so you can kind of treat it like a credit card or a line of credit or something, but you're actually not being charged fees on that. They simply draw from your checking account on a monthly basis to kind of pay it off. But it's great for budget tracking. And so, for instance, all of our guys, they have a $850 per year budget for tools and uniforms. They buy boots, pants. We provide shirts, hats. But they buy those things and their tools. So every year they get $850 to spend. And this is all tracked on Divvy. So they use their Divvy card. They've got an app. They can see where they're at all times. We can see where they're at. It's just very convenient. When it comes to like materials purchasing, that's actually the one area of the business right now that I don't have a grasp on. And there's that saying, what can't be measured can't be managed. And I'm a big fan of that, right? Pretty much everything in the business now we can measure. It's probably one of the biggest benefits of, say, Service Titan is you get data points from every area of the business, except for inventory. We don't have that with inventory. And right now our inventory costs and kind of our gross profit margin is a lot. It's not as high as I would like to. And we're spending more on materials than I think we should. So I'm just in talks with a software program to basically get really strict on our inventory and purchasing. And by strict, I mean like literally barcode, like print our own barcodes, slap them on all the materials we buy, and the guys scan stuff in and out of the shop in the truck. And so we can track exactly what we use and where. And if they order anything from our suppliers, it has to be attached to an invoice. I can set up certain rules and stuff. So that's kind of where we're headed.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Reason I asked, reading some of these financials, and obviously we're looking at add backs and such. A lot of times, I imagine they're making purchases with, certain credit cards and such for the business. But a lot of times that's not added to those add backs. That's not, that's something that's worth value. I mean, you may take a bunch of flights, or that may be a part of the business where your employees have to take flights, you're taking clients out and such. And these things can really be essentially added back and sort of inflate some of that value.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, I would make sure that they are. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Cool. I know we're at time, or just about. I'm happy to stick around for a while longer to answer questions. I can also share my screen if folks want to kind of see Service Titan. Happy to share our scorecard, our systems, what that stuff looks like if anybody wants. But if folks have to go, feel free to drop off.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing that, I would be curious to see it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me let's see. Do I have share permissions on here? Host disabled, participant screen sharing. I think you might need to enable it, Lance. Oh, there we go.
Good to go.
Okay, sweet. Okay, can you guys see? Can you see your beautiful faces? Okay.
Yep.
Well, first we can look at Service Titan. So this is what Service Titan looks like. Let's look at, let's say, last month. So this is the dashboard. I'm on here quite a bit. You can see our total revenue for last month. If we scroll down, these are all of our revenue producing technicians, basically. So these are all their stats across the board. I can see who brought in what revenue. Shane is our newer apprentice. So that's why he's quite a bit less, but he's getting in his own truck this month. And so he should catch up pretty quickly to these guys. Their productivity, revenue per hour, their billable hours sold, billable efficiency. I don't want to get too into the weeds, but again, you just have a lot of data on how everybody's performing, right? These are our kind of call stats right now. So we have kind of two CSRs right now that they answer the calls and book jobs. You can see their percentage booked from leads to actually booked calls, around 75%. This is actually probably closer to 80%. They need to often go back and recategorize certain calls, customers that have booked after the fact. So I think this number is actually tracking a lot closer to 80%, which is right about where we want it. This is the call screen. Basically every CSR has this up, and as the customer calls in, like this will light up with their name and phone number. And as you book the job, you're entering in all this information. This is kind of our work calendar. Pretty self-explanatory. Each color coincides with a different technician. This is the dispatch board. I love this, and a lot of people don't use it with Service Titan, but it basically lets me know where all of our guys are at any point during the day. So I can see, you know, Jacob right here is working on Plonk. That's a new business in town, basically. Let's see, faucet handle, one of the sinks needs to be adjusted. We've only left messages. So I know he's working here. I can click in here. I can see these are pictures he's taken. Like, you know, he literally just took these, you know, a couple hours ago, right? All this is logged. There's a whole log here of everything that's been done on this particular appointment. There's like we can view we can listen to the original call that this customer, when they called in. So again, tons of information. There's a purchasing part to this, which is all around inventory, follow-ups on kind of sold or estimates that haven't sold yet. I have a VA that kind of goes through this and follows a process to follow up with estimates we've sent out within a couple of days. This is your reporting side. So there's tons of different types of reports that you can generate. Marketing, we don't do much here yet. Frankly, because the amount of organic customer interest we have, we're still trying to catch up to that. I would say once we get 2-3 more techs on the road, I'll be looking into doing some marketing. So that's another thing just to keep in mind is you're not, you may not necessarily have to start spending a lot of marketing dollars and, you know, doing digital marketing, PPC, stuff like that right off the bat. We certainly did. We're still trying to keep up with organic interest. This is the price book. So that was one I just had to put in today, but you can see these are all different types of services, and, you know, they've got the picture associated, kind of a description, how many hours they take, and then all the materials that are in there. So this is something that it's constantly being updated, right? Like this is a boiler install, a Navian boiler install, 32 hours. It's, you know, $22,000. There's 57 materials in here that I had to find or create, and all our pricing on that. So this is what can take some time. Again, this is, you know, thousands of different products and services.
So Kylon, were you pulling this from the previous, I guess, desktop that the owner was using, or did you literally have to come in here and say, okay, here are the services that we do, and kind of work through it all?
Yeah, the latter. Like all of this stuff was in the seller's head, basically.
Wow. Okay.
And a lot of this, so this is Service Titan has Pricebook Pro. And so what it is it's a very generic list of thousands of these services and materials that they've gotten from just because they have so many businesses now. It's sort of national averages. So that is already built and ready to go. So it gives you a good foundation to work from. However, it's very temporary. You do need to go through and put in the specific details of the actual materials you install, the descriptions, your actual hours and pricing. And that's what takes time. So you're not building this 100% from scratch, but you kind of are at the same time.
Gotcha.
Like this is all the materials. These are all our equipment. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff here. So that's what that's what Service Titan looks like. I have a VA. So we have a company scorecard. Like one of the things we came in, I'm a big fan of the book Traction, or EOS, Traction by Gino Wickman. If you haven't read it, read it. It's an operating system for your business. It gives you kind of ideas around scorecards to set up meeting rhythms, how to kind of organize your organization. So we have this PlumTech scorecard. This is where I keep everything, all of our numbers, and I have a virtual assistant that basically on a weekly and monthly basis, she will pull numbers from here and put them over into this scorecard. And this is what we use in all of our meetings, right? So I'm tracking on a weekly basis. I'm tracking our revenue. We want to be doing 30K or more in revenue per week. We've really been exceeding that lately. We've got a section here for basically each employee. So like, here's Jake, last week, his goal was to do 16 sold hours, which kind of correlates to revenue. He did 21. I want my techs to do at least 8K per week. They've been absolutely crushing that. I might need to up this goal. His sold estimate conversion rate, how many 5-star reviews he got, his average ticket. So we track all these numbers. I try to keep it to 5 numbers or less per person. I really try to keep things very simple, but every single week, these guys get a screenshot of this, and they get a screenshot. And so here's like Cub, right? So on this last Monday, I sent him his screenshot for last week, and the techs love that. Like, you can't play the game if you don't know the score. And so I make sure everybody in the company, they know exactly how they're doing. And if they're overperforming, we celebrate. If they're underperforming, we talk about, it's not their fault necessarily. What's the underlying system that's kind of going wrong here, and how do we need to adjust things? I would really suggest, I love Google Suite of tools. So for instance, like, here's all of our leadership team meeting notes for weeks going back, right? That's all in Google Docs. Here's our all hands meeting notes. Here's an SOP for penalties that the techs get if they get too many callbacks. They get a certain amount deducted from their commission, right? All these things are centralized in Google Suite, and Google, they have what's called Google Sites. And so you can build an internal website, and I have it at plumtechknowledgebase.com. You guys can go here yourselves, but this is really only for our internal use. So all of our team has access to this. And so as we build more SOPs, they're being put here, and the techs know, like, hey, before you call me or call our master plumber with a question on, like, how do I do this? What's the process here? Check the website, because it's probably already there, right? So they go here, they go to company roles, they go to service technician, and here's a bunch of SOPs for them. And here's everything else, right? And it's all Google like Suite related, so it aggregates nicely. But for instance, they're making an estimate, right? Here's this estimating framework they can kind of quickly look at, right? And here's all these details on how to build a great estimate, including examples of estimates that were built. So this has been something that's been immensely helpful, to be a kind of a buffer between a tech constantly calling, me or calling our service manager, right?
Hey, Kylon,
Yeah.
Do you have to log in to access these SOPs, or can anyone with the link essentially kind of jump in?
Yeah, anyone with a link can basically jump into here and look at it. They just probably don't have edit permissions. They just have kind of view permissions, right? Okay,
so you're not worried about any other people trying to like kind of log in and check out some of these?
I probably could be more than I am, but I mean, if it's very, very sensitive stuff like passwords and everything, it really it doesn't end up on here. But I don't have much of a worry about that. I mean, you guys can go here and steal some of this stuff, and I don't care. You can do it. Other people in the business can do it. I suppose as we grow and get a lot bigger, we'd probably put in certain permissions and stuff. But right now we're just small enough. I like to keep it pretty transparent. Our employee handbook is here. Our company compass is here so folks can see like all the guys, they know our mission, our vision. Here's all of our goals, right? We hit this year's goal. We wanted to hit over $1 million in revenue. We're at like 1.5 now. This is what next year looks like. We've got kind of our flywheel on here, what that looks like. So these are all front and center for the folks here. Play handbook. What new folks read. Let's see. Service technician. Like for new guys, right? We got a new guy onboarding. I basically just sent him this link and be like, check these things out. So like, here's where a new guy would start. This is our SOP for level 1 technicians. Here's their guidelines. Here's like their position description, their primary responsibilities, their pay scale. Here's everything that over a 3-month period they need to sort of accomplish, right? They need to learn how to install P-traps, install stops. They need to do some book work, install faucets, learn how to pull and install toilets. And then we kind of have a pass fail here. And if they pass, they can move on to the next thing. So again, the key here is just keep everything in a centralized location. How do I view you guys again? Yeah. Well, anything else? Anybody who kind of wants to see? Or this is where I keep track of our tech's commission on a weekly basis. So you can see this was last payroll. On top of the regular wage, they got paid this for the month. Who was this? That was Cub. Yeah, he killed it that month. Rocks, you can kind of see I've really only had 1 full quarter in the business so far. That was quarter 4. And we're just about done with that. But you can see, according to EOS, right, I've got every quarter I sit down, we come up with the big rocks and stuff we're going to do. So we're going to implement commission structure. We did that. We moved strictly to service work and got the price book really detailed out. Define and implement company roles, systems for those roles, accountability. And so that's this scorecard. That's the website. That's all implemented. And then, man, getting vehicles these days is difficult. It's really difficult because of that chip shortage. We ordered a new van 6 months ago. We put money down and it's just now, or it was back in June, almost 6 months, and it's just now getting here. So.
Hey, Kylon, Doug here. I read Traction. That is a fantastic book. Did you build all these spreadsheets yourself, or did they? Yes, it did. Or did you? Wasn't there a place you could get some of these from, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel?
I built all these myself. It's fairly simple. And again, like I'm very happy to share this. Like, write down my information. I love talking about this stuff. Obviously, I really love nerding out over I love to get in the weeds on operations. So if you want any of this stuff, I'll send you, I'll make a copy of this and I can send it to you. But no, this stuff did not come from EOS. I built it all. There are certain, there's like Nexstar Network and some other very specific trades related organizations out there that I would pair those with EOS. EOS will give you kind of a generalized operating system for any business, right? But it's also smart to either get in a group of other owners in your industry, or some of these organizations like the Nexstar Network that can give you like industry specific KPIs to track. It's also not very hard to figure out. Like, when you've implemented ServiceTitan, they've got a lot of great resources. When you've learned the ins and outs of this business, you realize what kind of some of the key KPIs are, right? Like your average ticket, like your sold, your created to sold estimate conversion rate. But like when it comes to margins, right? These are like our monthly margins here. And these can be industry specific. So in general, I shoot for a 50%. I do this 50, 30, 20. I shoot for a 50% gross profit margin, 30% overhead, and 20% net. And so you can kind of see where we've hit that and haven't hit that through the last few months. We want to keep within certain margins when it comes to our wages. So we didn't do too hot on that this last month, but the previous 2 months, and there's reasons behind that. I can go into depth, but the last 2 months we did pretty well. Like we don't want our field labor to exceed more than 20% of revenue. We don't want our office labor. We don't want to be too top heavy there. So it shouldn't exceed more than 10%. And so altogether, our wages shouldn't be more than 30% of revenue. So these are industry specific KPIs that you just got to get with another plumbing company owner or some of these organizations, or I'm very happy to share as well. I don't know how I get back to viewing you guys again. Yeah. Hey, there we go. Cool. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, you know what? It was great to hear you talk about traction in EOS. Matter of fact, I was on a seller call today, and she was telling me that if you haven't read traction in EOS, read it. Okay, for sure, because that's how they're running their business today.
Yeah, I would do it right away. And we didn't implement 100% of EOS right off the bat. And part of that was because it's a bit of a smaller company. But like, for instance, the level 10 meeting, very first thing we did is like, okay, we're doing weekly meetings. Here's the meeting rhythm. And just something that simple can bring so much clarity to the organization. So, I mean, every week, everybody knows what I'm working on this week, what I worked on last week, and whether I did it or not. Here's the big rocks and projects we're working on. Here's any issues we need to work through. And it saves your butt throughout the week, right? If Slack is constantly dinging all day, and a lot of it is like, hey, we've got this issue, this came up, and now people know, just throw it in the meeting notes. Everybody's got access to that document. We throw it in the meeting notes. We'll discuss it when the time comes once a week. So yeah, do it. It's great. So, all right, I should probably run, but I appreciate you guys and all the questions. And obviously I love talking about this stuff. So if you want to, if you get into a business or something and want to connect further or want me to share more of this stuff, I'm very happy to. So
thank
you very much. Interesting.
Awesome.
Yep, great stuff, man.
Sweet. Good. Glad you guys enjoyed it. All right. Take it easy. Onward and upward.
Thanks, Kylon.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks again.